lights burned in old Reb Beresh's menorah. It was so quiet in the study house, one could hear the wick in the ceiling lamp sucking kerosene. Reb Beresh was saying, "Children, when one lives as long as I do, one sees many things and has many stories to tell. What I am going to tell you now happened in the village of Gorshko. Gorshko is small, even today. But when I was a boy, the marketplace was the entire village. They used to joke. Whenever a peasant came with his cart to Gorshko, the head of the horse is at one end of the village and the rear wheels of the cart are at the other end." Fields and forests surrounded Gorshko on all sides. A man by the name of Isaac Bashevis, who lived there, managed a huge estate owned by a Polish squire. Reb Isaac managed the property with skill. The squire used to flog the peasants when they did something wrong or if the mood struck him. But Reb Isaac spoke to the peasants as if they were his equals, and they were loyal to him. When a peasant fell sick, Reb Isaac's wife, Krendel, rolled up her sleeves and applied cups or leeches or rubbed the patient with turpentine. Reb Isaac Bashevis advised the peasants when to plow, what to sow, or what vegetables to plant. He had a special dairy house on the estate for churning butter and making cheese. He had a large stable for cows, hundreds of chickens that laid eggs, as well as beehives and a water mill. He had everything except children. It caused Reb Isaac and his wife grief. Even though there were only 2 people, Reb Isaac and his wife lived in a large house that had once belonged to the squire's grandfather. But what use is a big house for just a husband and wife? However, they both had poor relatives whose children came to live in the estate. Reb Isaac hired a teacher to instruct the boys in the Bible and the Talmud. Krendel taught the girls sewing, knitting, and needlepoint. Hanukkah is always a gay occasion in Reb Isaac's house. After blessing the candles, he gave Hanukkah money to all the children, and they played dreidel. Krendel and her maids fried potato pancakes in the kitchen, and they were served with jam and tea. Other poor people turned up at the estate, and whoever came hungry in tattered clothes and barefooted left with a full belly, warm clothing, and proper footwear. One Hanukkah evening, when the children were playing dreidel and Reb Isaac was playing chess with the teacher, Reb Isaac heard a scratching on the door. Reb Isaac opened the door himself, and to his amazement, on the other side of the threshold stood a fawn. Normally, an animal would keep away from human beings, but this fawn seemed hungry, cold, and emaciated. Reb Isaac stared in wonder, then brought it into the house. When the children saw the fawn, they forgot about the dreidel and the Hanukkah gifts. They were all so thrilled with the charming animal. When Krendel saw the fawn, she almost dropped the tray of pancakes she was holding. Reb Isaac wanted to give the fawn a pancake, but Krendel called out, "Don't do it, it's too young. It needs milk, not pancakes." The maids came in, and one of them went to bring a bowl of milk. The fawn drank all of it and lifted up its head as if to say, "I want more." This little creature brought much joy to everybody in the house. All agreed that the fawn should not be let out again in the woods, which teemed with wolves, foxes, martens, and even bears. A servant brought in some hay and made a bed for the fawn in one of the rooms. Soon it fell asleep. Reb Isaac thought the children would return to the game, but all they could talk about was the fawn, and Reb Isaac and Klendel had to give a solemn promise to keep it safe in the house until after Passover. Now that the children had extracted this promise, a new debate began. What name to give the fawn? Almost everyone wanted to call it Hershele, which is Yiddish word for fawn. But for some strange reason, Klendel said that you are not going to give that name to this animal. Why not? The children and even the grown-ups asked in astonishment. I have a reason. When Klendel said no, it remained no. The children had to come up with another name, and then Klendel said, "Children, I have it." "What is it?" the children asked, and Klendel said, "Hanukkah." No one had ever heard of an animal called Hanukkah, but the children liked it. Only now did they start to eat their pancakes. Then they began to play dreidel again, and they did not finish until midnight. Late at night, when Reb Isaac and Klendel were in bed, Reb Isaac asked Klendel, "Why didn't you like the name Hershele for the fawn?" Klendel replied, "It's a secret." "A secret from me?" Isaac asked. "Since we married, you never had any secrets from me." And Klendel answered, "This time I cannot tell you." "When will you tell me?" "The secret will reveal itself." Reb Isaac had never heard his wife speak in riddles, but it was not in his nature to insist or probe. "Now, dear children, I am going to tell you the secret," before Klendel told it to her husband. A few weeks earlier, an old man came to the estate with a sack on his back and a cane in his hand. He had a white beard and white side locks. When Klendel gave him food to eat, he took a large volume out of his sack, and while he ate, he read it. Klendel had never seen a beggar behave like a rabbi and a scholar. She asked him, "Why do you carry books on your back? Aren't they heavy?" And the old man replied, "The Torah is never heavy." His words impressed Klendel, and so she began to talk to him, and she told him how grieved she was at not having children. Suddenly she heard herself say, "I see that you are a holy man. Please pray to God for me and give me your blessing. I promise you that in about 1 year's time, you will have a child." "Oh, please, holy man," Klendel said, "give me a token or a sign that your promise will come true." And the old man said, "Sometime before your child is conceived, an animal will enter your house. When the child is born, call it by the name of this animal. Please remember my words." Before the old man left, Klendel wanted to give him clothes and food. But he said, "God will provide all this for me. I don't need to prepare it in advance. Besides, my sack is filled with sacred books, and there is no place for anything else." He left as quietly as he had come. Klendel did not tell her husband about his visit because she did not want to arouse hopes in Isaac that might never materialize. That night, when the fawn came into the house, Klendel understood that this was the animal that the beggar had mentioned. Since a fawn is called Hershele in Yiddish, she would give birth to a male child and call him Hershele. Klendel's words that the secret would reveal itself soon came true. She became pregnant, and Reb Isaac understood that the coming of the fawn was an omen of this hoped-for event. He said, when our child is born, if it is a male, we will call it Hershele. And Klendel answered, as you wish, my beloved, so it will be. Winter had passed, spring had come. Hanukkah had been growing in the cold winter months, and he sprouted antlers. Everyone could see that this animal was no longer happy indoors. His beautiful eyes expressed a yearning to go back to the forest. He wanted to go back outside. One morning, Klendel gave Hanukkah a tasty meal of hay mixed with chopped potatoes and carrots, and then opened the gates to the field and the forest. Hanukkah gave his mistress a look that said thank you, and they ran to the green pastures and the woods. Klendel predicted that in the winter, Hanukkah would turn up again. But Reb Isaac said, things cannot be foretold. Hanukkah had grown up, and an adult deer can find his own food, even in winter. Not long after, Klendel gave birth to a healthy little boy with dark hair and brown eyes, and there was great joy in the house. The happy father and mother had prepared a special repast for the poor on the day of the circumcision. Reb Isaac and Klendel both hoped that the older beggar might hear about it and come to the feast, but he never came. The summer drew to a close, and it became cool again. The feast of Hanukkah approached, and although everyone wondered what had happened to the fawn in the cold weather, nobody spoke about it, so as not to worry Klendel. This winter was even more severe than the former one. The whole estate was buried in snow. On the first night of Hanukkah, Klendel and the maids were busy frying pancakes. After Reb Isaac blessed the first light and gave coins to the children, they sat down to play dreidel. The baby Hershele slept in his cradle. The children of the house had prepared a gift for him, a fawn made of sugar, and on its belly was the inscription Hanukkah. When it was given to Hershele, he immediately began to suck on it. But the fawn didn't come that night. Reb Isaac comforted Klendel by quoting the Gemara, "Miracles don't happen every day." Klendel shook her head. "I hope to God that Hanukkah is not hungry and cold." On the second night of Hanukkah, while all the children were playing dreidel, they heard a scratching on the door. Klendel ran to open it and cried out with joy. At the door stood Hanukkah, already a half-grown deer, his body silvery with frost. He had not forgotten his benefactors. He had come to stay for the winter. Hershele woke up from the noise, and when he was shown the animal, he stretched out his hand, and the fawn Hanukkah licked his fingers with his tongue, as if he knew that Hershele was his namesake. From then on, the deer came to the estate every year, and always about the time of Hanukkah. He had become a big stag with large antlers. Hershele grew too, although not as fast. The third winter, the deer brought a doe with him. It seemed he had fought for his mate with another stag because a part of his antler was broken. Hanukkah and his mate were taken in. Reb Berish paused for a long time. The lights in the brass lamp were still burning. The children felt that the little flames were also listening to the story. Then a boy asked, "Did the old beggar ever come back?" "No, I never heard that he did. But you can be sure that this man was not an ordinary beggar." "What was he?" asked another boy. "The prophet Elijah. It is known that Elijah is the angel of good tidings. He never came in the image of an angel. People would go blind if they looked into the dazzling light of an angel. He always came disguised as a poor man. Even the Messiah, according to the Talmud, will come in the disguise of a poor man riding on a donkey. Old Reb Berish closed his eyes, and it was hard to know whether he was dozing or contemplating the coming of the Messiah. He opened them again and said, "Now, you go home and you play dreidel." "Will you tell us another story tomorrow?" another boy asked. And old Reb Berish replied, "With God's help. I have lived long, and I have more stories to tell than you have hair in your sidewalks."